Welcome to the Sanity Project podcast, where you can awaken your mind to clarity and success even in today's life challenges. We're here to provide insights and solutions that will help you live a sane, healthy, and prosperous life. Here's your host, Joanne Victoria.
Hello, everybody. This is Joanne Victoria with another amazing episode of the Sanity Project podcast. You are here to discover a life of clarity, confidence, sanity, and entrepreneurial success. Our guest today is Charron. Charron is a digital marketing expert and coach who's been featured on CNN, Fox, NBC, CBS, and USA Today. She's helped everyone, bestsellers, authors, bloggers, coaches, etc., to reach their true potential, and she's here to talk today to you about how she did it, how you can do it, and how you can move forward in your business life. Welcome to the show, Charron.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I'm grateful that you're here. You appear to be a generous, exciting individual and with a great deal of passion for her clients. And I think that's important that people hear that, and they also can hear from you how you created your first multi-million-dollar business in your 20s, because the 20-year-olds are listening.
That's amazing. That's wonderful. Yeah, sure. I mean, we'll just dive right in.
Please.
I love just going for it. So today I want to talk about, failing forward on your way to success. And I did create my first multi-million-dollar company in my 20s, and I lost it all before I was 30. And I like to say that I kind of have a PhD in resiliency because I have failed hard on my journey to success, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. Everything I have learned so many lessons along the way. And I love sharing stories, especially to entrepreneurs and people in leadership roles, because failure is just part of the process, and it's nothing to be scared of. And we're not taught in school that failure is a good thing. We're taught that it's a bad F word. And I always like to say, we don't fail. We have like a fun, it's just a fun attempt at learning, and it's just something that I know for my kids that I've really embraced the fact that we have to fail in order to have success. And if we allow those failures to hold us back, we're never going to get to the next level for ourselves. Now, personally, for me, that, when I was in my 20s, I honestly had no fear, right? Like nothing could go wrong. And so I invested, my first business was in real estate. As an investor. And I do remember, being the youngest person on the block. I had a 7,000 square foot house, and I was in with, doctors and lawyers, and, they were like, are these kids like doing drugs and selling drugs? And I'm like, no, we're in real estate. And they're like, my husband and I, we also have two children that are 13 months apart. They were little, very little back then. And, for me, when I was creating that, I was also at that time of like, you had to hustle to make money. There was no other alternative. And everyone I knew that was an entrepreneur was working really hard. And so that's what I did. And I've always been a creative person and tried to think outside the box. And really, I'm also from Canada. So we have different real estate laws over here, and acquiring real estate was tricky. Absolutely. Especially as, young kids starting your life out in your 20s. It's not like you have a whole lot of money and equity to begin with. So we built that over a few years, and it was a lot of work. And I learned so many lessons. And then some of you may recall, some people listening are like, don't even remember the crash of the market of 2008.
Big bad wolf, I swear.
Yeah. And so what is so interesting is I know in the States it was really bad. And I know I said I'm from Canada, but I live on a border city in Windsor, Ontario, right across from Detroit, Michigan. And so Detroit got hit, and so did Windsor. And I remember we had just a whole bunch of horrible events happen. And we were in a position where, even though we had a lot of equity in our properties and our apartment buildings and things that we owned, Windsor was actually blacklisted to refinance commercial property at the time.
Oh my God, that sounds like a sin.
Yeah. And so here we are. And I will say a really quick anecdote is we had one 20-unit apartment building, and we had some people break in and tamper with the boiler. And it was like the coldest, actually, in that time, it was like the coldest day in history. It was in March, and they broke the boiler of this 20-unit apartment building. And we had bought this as a fixer-upper. And so the tenants that had been there for a long time were loving us, but new people coming in, they're like, you're not going fast enough. And I don't know what happened, but the boiler was tampered with and all the heat went out in this 20-unit apartment building in very cold weather. And we were literally scouring the city trying to find heaters to heat, everyone had plug-in heaters. And long story short, we had to actually get everybody out of the building after a while because it was against fire code. They either had to remove their stoves or plug in heaters, and some people wanted to stay and some people wanted to go. So we literally had to have buses and all the things, and everybody had to leave and they had to get put up in a hotel and all of the things, and the press were there, and it was just, and then all of a sudden the city got involved, and then the fire marshal, and then all of
God, that sounds awful.
It really was. And then on top of that,
for you.
Yes. Well, on top of that, the insurance company said this. They were like, okay, well, here's the thing. You have to obviously replace the whole thing, this whole heater. The problem is that the building's so old, you have asbestos and around all the things. And long story short, it was going to be anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000. And remember, I said to you that it was a 2008 and no one was lending. And so I didn't have access to that kind of cash. And so the insurance company had said, well, here's the thing. You have to pay for it. We'll do an investigation. And then if we find that it really was tampered with, we'll give you the money back.
Okay, that's one.
Yeah. And so there was just all of the things that were happening. It just kept, and then City Hall wanted to meet with us. Then we had to have 24-hour security in front of the building to prevent looting. There was all of these things. And again, as a kid in my early 20s, my husband, I remember, went to the building when it was being evacuated. They had the big buses and and the press were all there. And it's so funny because we were so young, no one thought we were the owners.
Oh, good.
And so he was able to just go and, talk to some of the tenants, but not one reporter. No, they never assumed that he was the owner of this building. And we thought that was really funny because we're again, being so young, they're there's no way that these kids could own this building. And so long story short, that was the tip of the iceberg of a whole bunch of other events that helped collapse our business really fast. And it's funny, you can build something so quickly and it's so easy to unravel things really fast. And that was probably one of our biggest lessons. And being able to navigate through that, my husband and I have both always been into personal development. And I know that the skills and the tools that we've learned along the way have not only helped us survive that first thing, but had our marriage thrive through it and not have that fall apart, and being able to still be present with our kids and all of the things. And I think, it definitely, I would be lying if I said that was not a traumatic event for me, losing everything. And I remember, I'm a fighter. I'm definitely, I built this company. I kept fighting for it. And I had a mentor at the time say to me, Carrie, you have to know when to fold your hand. He's like, I get that you're a fighter, and I get that. He's like, but at some point you have to stop chasing good money after bad. And you've got to realize, and you got to look at your family, and you got to look at your life, and you've got to make a decision. And it really was a hard decision, like I said, because I had put so much into this company, and having to start over and go into bankruptcy was really challenging. It's funny because when people hear like, oh, you went into bankruptcy, I'm like, that was actually the easy. It was all the stuff
that's the
leading
easy
up to the bank. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like all the stuff leading up.
Yeah, that's the easy part. That's just paperwork.
Yeah, signing the paper and being like, I'm bankrupt.
Right.
That's fine. It was all of the events leading up to it that really leave you, in a place of like, can I even do this? Like, maybe I'm not meant to be an entrepreneur. Maybe I'm just meant just to go and do other things. And for a while, I really did play small and hide for a little while, especially in bankruptcy. In Canada here, you can't really make any money for like 18 months. And so I was just like, gosh, like, I don't know. And in that time, there's a lot of time to think about your failures, to think about all the things you could have done differently and go into a dark place. And for me, it was being able to focus on gratitude, focus on my family, focus on just being grateful for life. That kind of got me through all of that. But I will tell you, it took years for me to actually become an entrepreneur again, for me to actually be like, okay, like I can do this and I can have success. And for me, I hid behind other companies. I had skills. And again, in that time of transitioning into real estate, I fell in love with marketing. And so before real estate, I actually did go to college for like corporate communications, public relations, and multimedia and web design. And I actually had a web design company before I got into real estate. So I've always been like an entrepreneur, but after that big crash, I was just like, I learned all the things about digital marketing. I got really creative in bankruptcy. Like I would, again, like thinking outside of the box is like, okay, I really wanted to learn from this conference that was happening in Las Vegas. And I had no credit. I had no money. And I was like, how do I get there? Like, I really want to learn like what these people are teaching. So I went to a local business and I pitched them like, hey, are you interested in marketing? Like, this is some cool news. And back then it was email marketing and stuff like that, which today it's so funny because it's like email marketing is still a thing, but it was just like at its birth back then.
Right.
And,
it was fresh and new and different.
Yeah, it was fresh and new and different. It was like, your website's just a brochure, but email marketing, that's the thing. And so I went and I pitched this business and had said, listen, if you pay for me and my husband to go to Las Vegas, we will take all of that and I will come back and implement it for free into your business.
There you go. I'm going to stop just for a minute because people who are listening don't get that it's not about the money. I mean, yes, you lost money and, you're not the only one. And people who are listening have lost money and blown up big time, whether it was due to 2008 or what's going to happen in 2023, etc. But they had balls. And that's what you have. Did I say that on my recording? I don't care. It came out. They had courage. They had creativity because even without that, you wouldn't have been able to go to Las Vegas and change your life and change the life of numerous others and get yourself featured on CNN, Fox, NBC, CBS. What happened to ABC and USA Today? Sorry, I'm going through all the alphabet. Because you created the money. You created the opportunity. You did this. And you were in a place of where you could just as well have gone down to the basement, because they have them in Canada, go down to the basement, sit in a corner, open the bottle of booze, start smoking cigarettes and saying, screw all of this, I'm giving up. Mm-hmm. But you didn't. And that's what I want the audience to hear.
Yeah. And I will say, I'm glad you mentioned this because it also did remind me when I was in the midst of the chaos of the bankruptcy, I looked back, and at that time, again, in my 20s, I told you I had 2 young kids. They're 13 months apart. They were little. We had a live-in nanny. We traveled the world. Like, we had a mansion. We had all of the things. And I remember saying to my husband, I was like, if this is what it means to be rich, I don't want it. And I had so much stress. I had so much, like the way that our business is run and all of the things. I was like, if that's what being wealthy means, then I don't want it, because it was so stressful, even when we appeared to have everything on the outside. and I redefined what success means to me. And success means freedom and family and flexibility. That's what that means to me. And I will not sacrifice that for money, and I now have a company that I'm absolutely in love with. I have the freedom. I make amazing money. And not only that, my clients make amazing money. And so I feel like being able to define what I really wanted, I needed that failure and seeing what that type of success looked like for me to really define what does success really look like for me. And I think everybody is different. There are some people who really enjoy hustling. I'm not one of those people. I believe in having space and freedom. And I think that experience also led me to the vision of who I am, the vision that I have today for myself, the version of myself that I am today. I would not be if I didn't have that experience.
And people listening going, what is she talking about? What does she mean that the wealth can be stressful? I think there's something to be said for achieving that level of wealth when you get older. Because when you get a little bit older, let's say you were in your 20s, let's just jump to the 40s. If you were in your 40s, you have more resilience because you've had more experience at failure possibly, or some smaller failures along the way. But when you work hard and it happens so quickly and you have no more control of your life, and that's what you give up, I think, when you're wealthy at any level, but certainly when you're wealthy, very wealthy when you're young, you have no control of your life. There's a set pattern that's established in our universe about what you should do, what you should have, the nannies you should have, the size of the house you should have, the cars you should have, all of this stuff that may or may not be who you truly are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you've discovered. This is not who you truly are.
Yeah, 100%. And, I even remember being in our 7,000 square foot home and my husband being like, this just doesn't feel like home to me. And I was like, what? He's like, it really doesn't. It doesn't feel like home. And it doesn't. And so I think even evolving to, where I am personally today and how I've gotten here. And again, like I said, I did play small for years. I've, built other people's companies. I've been behind the scenes doing all of that. And I'll tell you something. It is when you see the possibility and that you desire more, it can be overwhelming, but at the same time inspiring. And so I know for me, being able to go behind the scenes, and I spent some years building some multi-million-dollar companies for other people and thinking that maybe that's all I'm ever meant to do. But then after a while, I worked through all of my limiting beliefs and all of my fears and was like, you know what? Enough is enough. And if I can do it for them, I can do it for me. And then I was able to have the courage to finally step out on my own.
Well, that's good. So when I say that, that's not a throwaway line. That's the truth, because those who are listening, if you have never failed big time, you don't understand what's going on today. Not with our conversation with Charron. So you don't get it. Now, if you have, you do get it. And if you've come close, you get it a bit. But if you haven't failed all the way to having nothing, zero, nada in your bank account, you don't know what's going on. So here is your chance to learn from someone who has failed magnificently, by the way. And, in a close by country, Canada, who seems to have a lot of stricter laws than we do in the U.S. Several prominent businessmen in the United States have filed for bankruptcy numerous times. Yes. So this is just a tool. It's just another financing tool. So what do we tell our audience on what steps they need to take in their life right now, no matter whether they're failing or succeeding?
Absolutely. I think that you need to be able to embrace the word failure into your vocabulary and not let it be scary, and redefine it so that it is a natural part of life, just as success is. And being able to know that life is 50-50, no matter where you're at. it's going to be good and bad, right? I think that's the other big thing is some people think that they're just going to arrive at happiness in a destination once they make so much money or their business is so. Let me tell you, I deal with all kinds of business owners. It does not matter what level of business you're at, whether you're starting or you have a multi-million dollar business. Life is still 50-50. There are still always problems. There are still obstacles. There are still failures at every single level. And so being able to know that this is just normal and part of the process, and that the quicker that you can get to process your failures, the better at success that you will become.
So how would they go about that? I'm thinking life is 50-50 because even, we have a left arm, we have a right arm, we have a left leg, we have a right leg, we have a left brain, we have a right brain. We have 50-50 of everything because yes. God forbid you lose one arm, you got another.
Yes.
Even if you lost use of one part of your brain, you can be not re-diagnosed, but retrained to use the entire other part of your brain and build that up. So I know this sounds a little off the wall, but this is Joanne, and that's the truth too. You can retrain in any part of your body, including your perception of what failure is.
Absolutely.
So we're helping our audience take a journey right now and know that if they're in success, they might have some failure, but the failure does not have to be 100%. They can have a 10% failure, and then they regroup. They can have 100% failure, and then they regroup. Everything changes. It all depends on your attitude and your perception of what's going on.
Absolutely, 100%. And if you can change your perspective, you can change everything.
Okay, so people can find Charron on characharron.com, which is KARACHARRON.com. She is on Instagram, and if you're looking at her data on my website, you can see the links that are going to show up there. And on Facebook, she has a group or a business page called Creative Digital Media Inc., which is capital K, Creative Digital Media Inc. And how else can they find you?
That's pretty much the best way. I mean, Instagram, I think it's Digital Business Breakthrough. And on my website, those are the biggest places that I show up.
Okay, so what will be your final words to our audience?
Oh, wow. Coming down to the final words. I would say, no matter where you are, to remember that life is a journey and not a destination. And when you can learn to embrace and be grateful for every part of the journey, the good and the bad, that's where magic can happen.
Those are totally great words. Audience, as I recommend pretty much each and every time I record a podcast, get your pen and paper out and start re-listening to this podcast again. And start taking notes, because you will find that you are in between the notes and you can change your life just by following some of the tools and tips that Charron has shared with you today. Thank you for being here, everybody, and take care and bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Sanity Project podcast. Please go to AskJoanneVictoria.com to listen to more podcasts. Check out Joanne's coaching programs and get a free copy of her report, 5 Steps to Achieve Life-Work Harmony. That's AskJoanneVictoria.com. Take care, and thanks for being here.